What's going on, everybody? If you're new here, my name is Alex Sibla. I own a 2020 Tesla Model 3 long range dual motor, and today I'm going to be talking about why I bought a Tesla specifically as an EV and why I bought my specific trim. So when I first decided I wanted an electric vehicle, I looked at a lot of manufacturers, but ended up on Tesla because I think personally they're way ahead of any other EV manufacturer on the market right now. So one of the main things that I think sets Tesla apart right now is their vertical integration, and I could do a whole video on this topic specifically. But essentially it boils down to Tesla creates basically all of the parts for their car versus taking things off the shelf and trying to fit them together to make a car. They've built this car from the ground up. They've built every specific piece and part so that it works perfectly in this vehicle. And that makes diagnosing issues really easy because everything is designed by Tesla. So if you bring it into a service center, they know what's wrong basically right away. Whereas with a legacy automaker, they might have not manufactured that specific piece that is going wrong. So they're going to have to contact somebody else and try to figure that out, and it's a whole mess. So not only are they further on the vehicle system space, but they're also further along in the self-driving space than just about everybody else as well. Autopilot was a big bonus here. Obviously you don't need this to drive, but the safety features that it adds and the sense of security it adds when you are driving on the highway feels awesome. I feel like I don't have to be constantly looking around and worrying about somebody hitting me. The car has more eyes than I do and can monitor more things than I can, so I still stay alert and make sure that everything is going okay, but I don't have that constant fear of somebody coming up in my blind spot and hitting me. Tesla is also very far ahead in the battery department, and with an EV this is very important obviously because it runs on batteries. With these batteries, they are more energy dense than almost every other EV manufacturer, which means you can go farther on a charge than any other car. And I'll get to range a little bit later, but when you're looking at an electric vehicle, range is probably the number one thing you consider. Not only will these batteries take you far, but they will also charge very fast. And with a Tesla, you have access to the Supercharger Network, a nationwide network of fast chargers to help you during your road trip. And I've done a whole video on why the Supercharger Network is superior right now, but it boils down to these chargers are faster and more reliable than just about every other network in the nation right now. And unfortunately right now, only Tesla vehicles can use them, which is a great selling point for anybody considering an electric vehicle, and it definitely helped me out in my decision. And lastly, I think Tesla vehicles are just cool. They're awesome looking vehicles. No offense to things like the first gen Nissan Leaf, but those are just ugly cars. I wanted something that looked cool and I enjoyed driving and caught people's eye when I was driving around. So after I decided on Tesla, I had to decide which specific model of Tesla I wanted, and I've actually done a whole video on this, but I decided on the Model 3. At the end of the day, it was a price thing. The Model 3 is the cheapest Tesla you can buy right now, and honestly, I think it's a really good value. So like I mentioned earlier, I got the long range dual motor version, but that wasn't what I originally wanted. I actually wanted the mid-range version of the Model 3, but unfortunately when I was getting serious about making the car purchase, they had eliminated that trim. I then looked at the long range rear wheel drive, which again they ended up eliminating when I went to buy the car. So that brought me to the long range dual motor. I had considered buying a long range rear wheel drive used, but it was only a couple thousand more dollars to get a brand new Model 3 that had an extra motor, so I opted for the new Tesla Model 3 versus a used one. So when I was looking at the different trims of the Model 3, I noted I wanted over 300 miles of range. Basically, I live in Columbus and I wanted to be able to get home to my family's house in Indianapolis without stopping, so it's about a 200-mile drive, so I know I wanted a good buffer there in case I ran into weather or anything like that. So when buying an electric car, I think you need to get as much range as you can afford. For me, this was about 300 miles, and that is plenty for me on a day-to-day basis, but when I go on road trips, that helps out even more. I can go even longer distances without stopping to charge. Range anxiety really isn't a big deal on a day-to-day basis, but when you are going on those long road trips, you're definitely going to want that extra buffer. You don't want to have to be worrying about reaching your destination because you're running low on charge. And since they eliminated the rear-wheel drive version, I did get dual motor, which was a nice bonus. Like I said, I do live in Columbus, so having those extra motors in the winter is really nice and helps with traction here when it gets a little bit slippery. One thing not a lot of people consider when they're comparing different trims of Model 3s is actually the charging speed. So in the Standard Plus right now, it's got a 54 kilowatt hour battery, while my model has a 75 kilowatt hour battery, which means I can utilize those higher charging speeds of up to 250 kilowatts, which is like your V3 supercharging, which is just insanely fast. You can add like 75 miles of range in like 5 minutes. minutes. It's insane. Whereas the standard plus can only charge at rates up to 170 kilowatts. So you do lose some charging speed there. And I wanted to reduce my charging times as much as possible, so that bigger battery helps with that as well. Some other nice perks with the upgraded version of the Model 3, you do get a premium interior, you get the premium sound system, you get a couple extra lights. Nothing that really swayed my decision either way, but those are nice to have in the long range dual motor. So then it came time to choose my color. At this time, the standard color was actually the pearl white. A few months before I bought my car, they actually made the switch from black as a standard color. And I knew I didn't want to be like every other Model 3 and be black or white, so I went with gray right in the middle. I chose the midnight silver metallic color. I really like this color. It's definitely my favorite in the Model 3. I think it's still pretty sleek, and it's still a darker colored car, which I prefer. And it looks really nice, so I opted for that. It was a $1,000 upgrade, but I thought it was worth it. If I was spending this much money on a car, I wanted it to be exactly how I wanted it. So then it came time to choose my seats, and I opted for black. I actually really like the white seats and the white interior in the Model 3. I think they look very nice, but I'm somebody that uses my car on a day-to-day basis. I'm throwing things in and out. I'm eating sometimes in the car, so I didn't want to risk spilling something or staining those white seats. I had seen some issues online of people like wearing jeans in the car and staining their seats a little bit blue, and I just didn't want to deal with that, so I went with the black seats because they're a little bit easier to take care of. Next, I had to choose my self-driving options, and fortunately at this time when I went to purchase the car, basic autopilot was included on all Model 3s. It was completely free, maybe not completely free, but it was included with the purchase of the car. In basic autopilot, I've talked about it a little bit before, but essentially it just keeps you in your lane and will speed up and slow down based on traffic. The only upgrade to autopilot at this point was a $6,000 upgrade to full self-driving. This gets you a few features. I'll put them up on the screen here, but it gets you navigate on autopilot, so it'll do automatic driving from highway on-ramp to off-ramp, including interchanges and overtaking slower cars. This is probably the feature I miss the most right now, because if I am driving on the highway and doing long distance travel and I need to switch lanes, I have to take the car off autopilot, switch lanes, and then put autopilot back on, whereas Navigate on Autopilot would do all that automatically. Included in Navigate on Autopilot is auto lane change. You also get auto park. This just does parallel and perpendicular parking for you with just the press of a button. But again, for $6,000, I've been doing this 7-8 years with no problem, so I'm gonna stick with that. You also get Smart Summon, so your car will come find you in the parking lot. You also get the just regular forward and reverse summon, which I wish they would just include on the regular Model 3s, because there are some times where I pull into a tight parking spot and I don't want to try to like risk dinging somebody's door, so it'd be nice just to be able to reverse my car a little bit so I can get into the driver's seat. But again, with Smart Summon and regular summon, this isn't worth $6,000 to me. I think these are things I've been doing just fine on my own, so not worth it for me. The nice thing is that all Model 3s now come with the full self-driving computer, so if you do want to add these options later, and I do have this option as well, I can always do that. I have all the hardware necessary to do these things. I don't need to go into the shop and get any kind of upgrade. They can just push the software to my car and I'll be good to go. One thing I would like to see is them kind of split out these options a little bit more. They've been starting to do it in the Tesla app where you actually have an upgrade section, but unfortunately right now these are all bundled together in a $6,000 option. I think I would definitely pick and choose a couple of these options if they were cheaper and split out into a smaller price. But for right now, I decided on none of these features because for $6,000, they're just not worth it for me. And they've actually upgraded the price to $7,000 now, which means it makes even less sense. So far, I've been loving my car. I've made a lot of videos on it if you've been following the channel, but another reason I bought this car was for this channel. I think a lot of people still haven't been exposed to electric vehicles. A ton of people know they exist, but actually haven't seen them in person or seen another person's perspective of owning an electric vehicle. So really this car is for you guys, the viewers, to show you what it's like to own an electric vehicle. They only make up about 2% of new car sales, so still a very emerging market, but I think this is definitely going to take off over the next 10 years and be one of the main modes of transportation for passenger cars. So with this car purchase, I think I'm also investing in the future. I think this whole infrastructure and mindset around electric cars is going to undergo a big shift in the next 10 years, so I am ready for that. So if you have any questions about my car or why I chose certain options that I didn't answer here, definitely let me know down in the comments. I love hearing from everybody and hearing their perspective on an electric vehicle or answering any questions they may have, so definitely let me know down below. Thanks again for watching. Hit that like button if this helped you out at all, and I'll see you in the next video.